Wars tend to have a reputation for being long, grueling conflicts that are tiresome for all parties involved, and while the war I am to mention shortly definitely had suffering involved with it, it was certainly neither long nor grueling. Many of you in the audience will certainly have at least heard about this war in passing. You'll most likely know that the war lasted no more than 40 minutes, or shorter than the length of an average television episode. The war I am referring to is, of course, the Anglo-Zanzibar War. First, let's set the stage and get some context in here. Firstly, Zanzibar refers to a series of islands on the modern-day coast of Tanzania. There is also a city named Zanzibar located on those islands. Now, during the 19th century, when this story is taking place, Zanzibar was a sultanate and an independent state. During the first half of the 19th century, Zanzibar was able to increase its territorial holdings and general power across the world. However, in the latter half of the 19th century, Europe collectively decided that it would be nice to control the entirety of Africa, and so began a period of colonialism known as the Scramble for Africa. In this scramble, European powers, mainly Britain and Germany, were able to force Zanzibar into giving up most of its territory to them, and Zanzibar begrudgingly agreed because they decided that it wasn't a great idea to take on a power 5 times your size at least. By the year 1890, Britain had successfully convinced Zanzibar into giving all their remaining mainland African territory to Germany, and into turning Zanzibar into a British protectorate. Now, Britain did allow there to remain a Sultan of Zanzibar. However, Britain made it very clear that the position of Sultan would essentially just be a figurehead and would have no real power. So, Britain wanted Zanzibar to do multiple things, one of which was abolishing slavery. This did not sit well with the Zanzibari locals, as slavery had been incredibly valuable for the Zanzibaris, and they did not want to give it up. One major force against the abolition of slavery on the island was the Sultan himself, Sayyid Ali ibn Sayyad, which is a name I'm almost certainly pronouncing wrong. The Sultan pushed back against essentially everything Britain wanted, and this made it quite difficult for Britain to achieve their goals. Luckily for the Brits, though, he was only in power for about 3 years, as he died in 1893, at which point Britain called for Hamad ibn Thuan to become the new Sultan, as he would be less resilient towards the British. However, another guy by the name of Khalid ibn Bargash decided that he would make a far better Sultan, and so occupied the palace. The British got Khalid to calm down, and then allowed for Hamad ibn Thuan to become the uncontested Sultan of Zanzibar. At first, Hamad ibn Thuan was amiable towards the British and did as he was told, just as the British had hoped. But by the year 1896, he became resentful of the British control over the island and created a 1,000-man force that was loyal only to the Sultan. But Hamad ibn Thuan would also reign for no more than 3 years, as he died on August 25th, 1896. The British wanted a guy called Hamoud ibn Mohammed to take the throne, but Khalid ibn Bargash was determined not to be passed over again for the Sultan position, thinking he was still a much better candidate for the position. He again occupied the palace, but this time surrounded it with 3,000 of the Sultan's soldiers and a bunch of other people loyal to him. He also had access to a small battery of artillery and the armed royal yacht Glasgow. In response, the British gathered a force of about 900 soldiers and 5 boats, and Rear Admiral Harry Rawson sent an ultimatum to Khalid, stating that if Khalid did not leave the palace with his men and surrender all of his arms by 9 a.m. on August 27th, the British would fire on the palace. Khalid believed that this was a bluff, and nothing would come of the threat, and so denied the request. However, Rawson, staying true to his word, opened fire on the palace at 9 a.m. on August 27th, thus beginning the Anglo-Zanzibar War. The Glasgow, controlled by the Sultan, fired back, but was quickly dealt with by Admiral Rawson. 38 minutes later, the British stopped firing. The British held the road on the outskirts of the city, and Khalid quickly surrendered. In the chaos of everything, he managed to seek refuge in the German consulate. All in all, there were 500 casualties on the side of Khalid, whereas there was just 1 injury on the British side, a sailor who soon recovered. The war went down as the shortest recorded conflict in world history, and the only war which can be measured in minutes. In the aftermath of the conflict, Hamoud ibn Mohammed became the Sultan and did everything the British wanted because it was clear that the Brits were not ones to be trifled with. As for Khalid ibn Bagash, the Germans allowed him to live in exile in the city of Dar es Salaam, which at the time was part of Africa controlled by the German Empire. He was eventually arrested by the British during World War I and later died in the city of Mombasa in the year 1927. There would be no further revolutions in Zanzibar, and the British would eventually relinquish the protectorate status from Zanzibar in 1963. In conclusion, most wars are long, but this one took place entirely in one single hour, and I can say with certainty that I spent more time working on summarizing the war than the war itself lasted. Thank you for watching this video, and have a good day.